Hello, welcome to BBC World News. I'm Naga Munchetty.
And I'm Alice Baxter, the headlines. Well, hello. Also coming up in business a little bit later, we look ahead to US investment in Africa.
Let's start the programme, though, with news that Nelson Mandela is now critically ill in hospital in South Africa. The health of the former president, who is 94 years old, has deteriorated over the last 24 hours. An official announcement came from the South African presidency as doctors treat Mr Mandela at a hospital in Pretoria. Mike Waldridge sent this report from Johannesburg. Ecuador says it has received a request for asylum from US intelligence agent Edward Snowden. The whistleblower fled Hong Kong and arrived in Moscow on Sunday, where US authorities wanted to extradite him after he leaked documents revealing mass internet and phone surveillance by US intelligence. Our security correspondent Gordon Carrera reports. Let's get more on this from Oleg Boldarev, who's in Moscow following events for us. It's an interesting position that Russian authorities are putting themselves in when it comes to Mr Snowden, isn't it? Oleg Boldarev from Moscow there. Let's get back to our main story now. News that Nelson Mandela is critically ill in hospital in South Africa. We can get more from James Copnell, who's following events from Johannesburg. James, we knew that Nelson Mandela had a lung infection the last time we had reports that he was critically ill. Is this the same situation? OK, let's find out what's going to happen in World Business Report with Alice, which is up in about 20 minutes. Alice, good to see you. What's happening?
Morning for you, Naga. We've actually got quite a packed day for you coming up in about 20 minutes' time, because one of the stories that we're across, the US Secretary of State John Kerry, he's meeting India's Prime Minister Manmohan Singh on Monday. Also, the world's biggest coffee chain is to pay corporation tax in the UK for the first time in 5 years. Well, Starbucks have been vilified. Naga and I are also going to be talking about that story in the paper review a little bit later on, so hang fire for that. Quick look at the markets now. On Friday in Asia, we saw them slightly stabilise, but this is how they're doing right now. They are down across the board. The Nikkei in Japan down 0.04% at the moment. I'll be looking at those a little bit more for you in World Business Report again in about 15 minutes' time. See you then, Naga.
See you later, Alice. Thank you. A court in Milan is expected to decide later whether Silvio Berlusconi paid for sex with an underage prostitute and abused his powers to cover it up. The former Italian Prime Minister faces a jail sentence of up to 6 years and a lifetime ban for public office. Alan Johnston reports from Milan. Do stay with us on BBC News. Still to come, the desperate search. Let's take a look at some of the news from the UK now. Former undercover watching BBC World News. I'm Naga Munchetty. Here are the latest headlines. The death toll in flash floods and landslides in northern India continues to climb. Officials say more than 600 people are confirmed dead and at least 40,000 are still stranded. Nitin Srivastava in Rishikesh, thank you very much for joining us and keeping us up to date. Nitin will keep us up to date as events progress. In other news, European politicians are entering the final round of talks on Monday to reform the controversial Common Agricultural Policy. The CAP, as it's known, began in the 1960s to increase food production and costs around $75 million a year. From the UK, our environment analyst Roger Harrabin reports. Let's bring you up to date with some sports news now. And in a few hours, Wimbledon, the only Grand Slam championship played on grass, begins. Mark gets all the good jobs, doesn't he? Let's go to cricket now. And India has its hands on the ICC Champions Trophy after beating England by 5 runs in a nail-biting final at Edgbaston on Sunday. The game was reduced to 20 overs aside after a day of rain, but that didn't dampen the drama of the match. Tim Haig has the details. So that's the sport. Let's remind you of our top story this hour. The former South African president, Nelson Mandela, in Pretoria. He was admitted 2 weeks ago for a recurring lung infection. Of course, we'll keep you up to date with our correspondents in South Africa. They're covering events from Johannesburg and Pretoria. Alice is going to be up with the latest business news in World Business Report next. Now it's time, though, to get the weather where you are. I'll see you soon. Hello, you're watching BBC World News. I'm Naga Munchetty. Here are the headlines. Those are the latest headlines from BBC World News. Now, for the latest financial news with Alice.
A very warm welcome to you. This is World Business Report with me, Alice Baxter. Now, in just a minute, we have an exclusive interview with the head of the Bangladeshi Central Bank. But first this hour, the US Secretary of State John Kerry meets India's Prime Minister Manmohan Singh on Monday. On the agenda will be barriers blocking US firms from investing in India. But Mr. Singh will also raise concerns about US immigration reform. Well, plans by US lawmakers to overhaul temporary working visas could make it harder for Indians and other expatriates to find jobs in the US. Michelle Fleury went to meet one Indian-born worker hoping to carve out a career in New Jersey. Now, as we've been hearing, former South African President Nelson Mandela is critically ill. Later this week, President Obama is due to visit South Africa. He'll also be stopping at Senegal and Tanzania in a tour intended to strengthen ties across the continent. Well, 6 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies are in Africa, and $57 billion flowed into the region last year in foreign investment. But only a small proportion of that would have been from the world's biggest economy. Well, Razia Khan is head of regional research for Africa at Standard Chartered, and she joins me now. And how far does the US lag behind China in terms of its involvement in Africa? And is that something that the rest of the world should be worried about? Now, let's talk about Nelson Mandela. And let's talk about his legacy in terms of the effect that he's had on the economy of both.
Absolutely.
OK. Razia Khan, head of regional research for Africa at Standard Chartered. Many thanks for those thoughts. OK, well, the governor of the Central Bank of Bangladesh has insisted the Rana Plaza building collapse, in which over 1,000 people were killed, was a one-off and will not hold back the country's booming garment trade. Governor Atia Rahman told the BBC's chief business correspondent Linda Yu that foreign buyers also needed to work with factories and trade unions to improve conditions for workers. OK, let's bring you some other news now this Monday. And the heads of 15 of the world's biggest banks had their pay cut by an average of 10% last year. But bank profits fell by a fifth, according to the Financial Times in all. Well, in previous years, bankers continued to award themselves large bonuses despite falling profits, sparking public outrage and shareholder revolts. Well, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan had his pay slashed by a fifth following huge trading losses. Okay, let's have a quick look to see how markets are doing this morning. And over in Asia, we saw them recovering slightly on Friday following that Fed announcement. But this morning, look, they're slumping again, led by some key policy decisions in China. That's all from me. Back in a moment.
Hello. A former undercover police officer has claimed that he was ordered by Scotland Yard to spy on the family of Stephen Lawrence, who was the black teenager murdered in London 20 years ago. Peter Francis told The Guardian and Channel 4's Dispatches programme that he was under pressure to find information that would smear the family and undermine its criticism of the police investigation into Stephen's killing. Tom Simmons reports. Well, you can see more on that story, along with all the day's other news, business and sport, with Bill Turnbull and Susanna Reid. They'll be here with breakfast on this channel at 6 o'clock. Do tune in. Hello, you're watching BBC World News. I'm Naga Munchetty. These are the top stories this hour. OK, it's time for the newspaper review. This is where we take a look at the stories which are making headlines around the world. We'll begin with The Times. You're a big Wimbledon fan?
I am.
Me too. You?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But this is Paul Charles of his highlight.
The most important part.
Which it's a big sporting month, actually. Let's talk about The Times. Nelson Mandela, aged 94, has become critically ill. The presidential office, and President Zuma has obviously appealed to the nation and the world to pay for him, to pray for him and his medical team as well. Keeping actually people quite informed about his medical team and the condition of him. He had a lung infection previously.
Yeah. What is it about Nelson Mandela, isn't it? Even though it's such a well-known story, you always hear new things about him and what he achieved.
Very much so. And if
Edward Snowden, he's causing quite a diplomatic row, I think.
in the airport or on a flight, on an Aeroflot flight.
As we understand that he was shuttled straight from the plane into a taxi at Sheremetyevo, and no one saw him at all, did they?
No, so apparently...
Been there for around a year. What do you make of Starbucks' £5 million, and I'm going to put in quote marks, voluntary
their defence all along has been that everything that they've done has been entirely legal.
That's
whether
right.
it's ethical, whether it's moral is a different issue, but it is legal. Moving on, the International Herald Tribune, central bankers, so we're talking about things like the Federal Reserve in the United States, the ECB. Simple choice, isn't it, is that we've become used to hearing terms like stimulus and things, which is something that central banks can do, and they're saying we need to revert to more traditional means of monetary policy. Which
Should be making what pay? Quick word on this. 19 million pounds. More people don't even win that on the lottery, let alone earn it in a year. Is this good PR for Andy Murray? On the front page of the Daily Telegraph, the quote is, I might never win Wimbledon. He's admitted he may never win the Grand Slam. He's playing his first match this afternoon. That's no way to go into a competition if you're a top athlete.
It's the sign of a bit of a loser, really, isn't it?
going to warm the hearts of all these people that have been queuing overnight for 2 days waiting to get these tickets.
Well, are they
the
queuing
rest
for
of us
Murray?
waiting with bated breath.
Are they
Well, this
queuing
is
for
it.
Murray or someone else?
Paul doesn't even
Djokovic.
believe they're queuing for Murray. You believe they're queuing for the
They're
strawberries.
queuing for the strawberries, without doubt. I mean, fantastic strawberries at Wimbledon. It's a booming business. The strawberry suppliers make a fortune at Wimbledon every year, and the weather forecast is good for this week. That's the story this week. It's
So
about
that should have been the front
strawberries
page story.
and the fact that the price is going to be higher. That'll be the story.
Price of strawberries,
great.
that's
Going up.
always the
Going
story.
up.
Paul, it's always good to have you with us. Paul Charles there from Perrone Communications. Alice and I will see you very soon.
See you soon.